Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of The Conversation, Outspoken and Opinionated. Of course, we're here. It's a Thursday at 7 p.m. and we're here to have a great time. I told you guys this month is the month of Black women in politics. We started off with some amazing women. First we had Sylvette Gibson from Monrovia, Liberia, who was the mayor, used to be the mayor of the city of Painesville. Then we went to Sia Fenner, who's currently in running for PG County Councilwoman. And today we have none other than the amazing Kayce Munyeneh. She is the vice mayor of the city, recently been re-elected as a vice mayor of the city of Cheverly here in Maryland. She does amazing other things. Like I said, if you guys remember last week, we had a conversation with the lady who, one of her things were, being a female in politics, it's hard for, the men to come around because she's a woman. And so she had her opinion. But Kayce is married. She has a son. She has a business. She has a lot of things going on. And she's in politics. So tell you guys, it's going to be juicy because I need to know how she did this. Because side note, I know her husband. And so I'm going to pick her brain and I'm going to record that part so I can send it to him. So you guys don't let her know she's watching though. She can see what's going on. But yes, The Conversation, Outspoken Opinion. This is where we have all these amazing conversations. So guys, let's welcome Kayce. You are welcome. Welcome back to The Conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I've missed you. I feel like
I miss you too.
It's been so long since I've actually seen anybody in person, but I feel like it's been a while since I talked to you too. So
I know COVID has kept us all inside. I said the other day when Dr. Fauci said, those who are taking the vaccine can wear the mask. I'm like, I'm sorry. Cannot wear the mask. We're fine now. I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to wear my mask.
Yeah.
Because especially since I just bought a whole box from Walgreens, I gotta finish that.
Make good use of it. That's right. So it's not want not. That's right.
Well, how you been doing since the last time we had you on here?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I can't complain.
Nice. Yeah. It's really good to see you. We're just gonna jump straight in. First of all, from the Conversation family, we are going to rally around you and say congratulations on your rerun and re-election and everything of being the vice mayor of the city of Cheverly. So I want to ask you, how is Alonzo and Justice?
So those are my two big babies. Alonzo is my husband, and Justice is my 3.5-year-old, and they are well. They're very well taken care of, believe it or not. So they're doing good.
Awesome. So how are you doing?
I'm here. For with anything, there's ebbs and flows, good days and bad days. But there's the grace of God, and so that keeps me. I'm doing great.
Good. So some people wanted to know, apart from you being the vice mayor, what else do you do? Apart from being a mom and a wife.
I tell people I'm overemployed.
Can you employ me?
Well, you're doing pretty good. You have a couple of hats that you wear too. You know what? I'm a regular government employee. That's what I tell folks. I work for the federal government, but outside of that, I do contract work. I'm in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. I used to do a lot of victim services work, so I'm still doing speaking engagements for that. Presently, this week we are in the crimes against the Conference of Crimes Against Women, and so I'm speaking for that about vicarious trauma. And then I have my different duties under my vice mayor and council member hat. I'm the vice mayor of the town, but I'm also the council member for Ward 4.
Okay.
And Ward 4 usually takes up most of my time, my free time. And then I have various sororities and organizations that I participate in to volunteer and really try to give back to my community. So I am actively selling real estate because the market is just wonderful. And so that's usually my Saturday and Sunday gig. Don't tell my pastor that because he'll think that I'm not coming to church for that reason, but I'm still doing Bedside Baptist. So, but yeah, I'm a busy person, and I prefer it that way. It's kind of how I get a clear headspace, interestingly enough. So that's my sweet spot.
I understand you because if I'm not doing 5 or 6 things, I get sick. Something happened to me. Like I'm not functioning properly.
Yeah.
I'm kind of slow. I don't answer questions right. Probably okay. No, I need to find something else. But thank you for clarifying because I was going to ask you if being the council member for Ward 4 was the same thing as the vice mayor. But I guess there are two separate roles in the city of Cheverly.
Yes.
Oh my God! Like, is there anything else you aren't doing? Like,
um, yeah, there's plenty.
yeah,
There's
you're doing
plenty.
a lot.
You
Well,
know,
I appreciate you. Go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
no, I've had a lot of people ask me why in the world would you do all that. When I first was asked to run, I did not want to run for office. I'm painfully candid. I'm a very poor politician. I'm really honest with people, and that's not what politicians are supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to tell you what you want to hear, and I don't do that very well at all. And to be well received when I first got into office, let me know that people were open to someone different with a different personality. And then once I got there, I realized how important it was to have a seat at the table. And so I'm really proud of the work I've been able to do. Some of the people in Fourth Ward have said they have not had sidewalks in 40 years. Like, that's just absurd, right?
Sidewalk in America in 40 years.
In 40 years.
Wow.
So just really kind of focusing on advocating for parts of the community that have not usually had their voice heard. And I've been really pleased with how that has worked out and how the community has kind of rallied around me. So I'll be there as long as they want me to serve.
Oh, amazing. But I like that because you took it like you got my question. So let's just go into it. So let's talk about this second term. How was the campaigning?
So this is technically this is my third term. I was appointed for a short period of the first term.
Oh, okay.
Then I ran for election. So that was my first run. And then this is
Okay.
my second term.
Okay.
Campaigning was very different this time.
Hmm.
Because I have been, as your show likes to say, outspoken
Yes.
about equity and diversity in our town. There was sort of a whisper campaign to try to have me taken out of office.
Oh, wow.
Um, and in so many ways, I just love, applying, the scripture to this. It was really like a spiritual warfare moment where I could truly say, like, all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord,
Uh-huh.
because in the efforts that were made, it really angered some of the people that aren't normally involved. And so for the people that aren't normally involved, they got involved, and they spread the word. I didn't even have to really do my campaigning anymore. I had one person on Cheverly Avenue calling everybody down the street. I had another person on Arbor Street saying absolutely not, because I was uncontested all the way up until 1 week before the election. So it really just didn't look savory.
Okay.
It really looked like an attempt to really impact my campaign in a negative way. And so again, I cannot stress how much the community rallied around me. And when I talk about the community, a lot of my constituents are in their 80s and 90s.
Oh, wow.
One of my constituents was bedridden and came out to vote. And so those are the moments where I'm like, I have to show up and do my job because they've had my back. So I couldn't have asked for a better group of constituents. I really couldn't have.
So, did you find it difficult to campaign as a female?
That's a really good question. In a number of arenas, people have asked me about what are some hurdles to being in politics or some barriers. And I tell people all the time, I grew up in a very abusive, dysfunctional home. But even in that home, nobody ever told me I was less than because I was black or a woman. So I don't go around thinking, oh, I'm a woman, so you won't vote for me. I go around thinking, hey, I get stuff done, so you should vote for me. Um, and so that's kind of the attitude that I brought to each door that I knocked on. I let people know what my accomplishments were, and I didn't really think about being a woman. I am 100% cisgendered, born that way, but that to me wasn't an obstacle. There are some women who have run for office, particularly in our town, who have been told, "Don't you need to be taking care of your baby?"
Mm.
And in some ways, I think that, quite frankly, being a black woman played a part in me not having people ask me those questions, because there's definitely the assumption that black women are super women. We can do everything and anything, including make dinner, change diapers, and run the town. So I never let that be a hurdle or stop me.
So, how was your integration into politics as a mom, a wife? Some people might say, it's hard. I had somebody, last week who did give her opinions on, being a mom and married at the same time running politics, and she's seeing this conflict with, I would say Black or African men and their wives where they want to compete because it's a man's world. So, how was your integration as a wife and a mom?
I'm gonna upset some of your viewers with it. So it first and foremost, it is hard
Mhm.
because there is a natural. Well, first and foremost, let's back up. My husband did not agree. He did not get married to a politician.
Oh, I was because I we're going.
So he got married to a woman he thought was cute, and I wasn't a politician at the time. So he didn't sign up for this. And there definitely has been an adjustment in his comfort level and what we need to do to make sure our family is still a family. Because at the end of the day, when all is said and done in the town of Cheverly, I still have to be Mrs. Munyeneh
Yep.
and Mama Munyeneh. So, and I would throw in the added caveat that I am an African American married to an African man with strong cultural ties to being an African man. And so there are quintessential expectations of what my role is in the house. We have had conversations about whether or not he thinks he can eat if I don't make dinner, you know? But there's been some adjustments. He lives in the United States and he knows that he married an African American and his wife is in politics and may have a meeting every night of the week. And so there's give and take. And sometimes there's lots of sacrifice. And that is hard. Again, he
Mhm.
didn't sign up for this. I think that he's done an amazing job thus far, given the 6 hour meetings that we have, the frequent meetings that we have. There's a lot that goes into serving the community and being a public official and a politician. And so I think we've done a pretty good job so far.
And I am so excited to see you doing that. I'm so excited because, like you said earlier, he did when he got married to you. You were not into this,
No.
and the fact that you are doing it, and like you said, there are some bad days where, as a man, I know there are some days you'd be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, can we just be home? Can you not do this?" But at the end of the day, it's like if you shine, we shine, and the whole family is gonna shine. So, I was looking at the picture when you were being sworn in, and I saw him there in Little Justice, and I was like, this is what other men need to see. Just from a picture, you can understand that, hey, it's my wife. And at the end of the day, I'm still going to support her no matter what. But, you again, the vice mayor of Cheverly. What do you think now in your city is more important?
So I don't know who all is listening and where those folks are located, but we had a huge storm September 10th. It was a 1,000 year storm, and most of our homes got flooded.
Whoa.
Cheverly is on a number of different springs. Some people's homes are on top of ponds and bodies of water. We've had to have homes lifted off their properties because they're in a flood zone. And so a lot of my constituents were impacted. And so we're trying to figure out how we can use American Rescue Plan funds to kind of prevent that from happening again. The other thing about politics to keep in mind is a lot of times you're doing cleanup work from somebody's administration before yours. And so you can't just say, "Oh, they did a terrible job back then and there." No, you gotta show up and deliver because
Mhm.
nobody cares how we got here. And so a lot of the infrastructure in town really needed to be changed and improved probably 20 years ago and just wasn't. And so now we're taking that on this new cycle, new fiscal year. Aside from that, we do need to talk about equity. One of the reasons why the grapevine said that they wanted to have me removed is because I kept focusing on equity. Well, there's a really great article that talks about the power of one,
Mhm.
and it's regarding a town council that I want to tell you is in Alabama. And they talk about how systematic racism has essentially prevented any more than one Black person from ever serving on council. And so not only do we have the most diverse council in history in our town, but we now have two Black people that sit on it. And that may seem like just a mundane thing, but that's history, you know? And the more I hear about first Black this and first Black that, I think two different things. There's a dichotomy there. One is how sad. like we're just getting the first black so and so, right?
Yeah.
But then I'm also like, that's another door that we've entered. That's another barrier that's been broken. And so I just want to keep seeing that happen in town. Our population in town is 57% African Americans, and we've still never had a black mayor. We have our first ever black town administrator. And so I just want people to see the humanity in black people in particular, minorities, but black people in particular as well. So infrastructure and equity, those are our two things.
Okay, so we do have a question from someone who's watching, and her question is, I don't know if you can see it. She said, how did you get your husband to compromise and bring him to support you without feeling threatened as a man of the home?
So I don't have a good answer for you. I'm an old-fashioned woman. That's why he married me. I'm from the South. And so there are traditional values that I brought to my marriage. Yes, cooking for a man will make him consider marrying you. And so during our courtship, I probably made him dinner every day. He at least had 2 to 3 course meals. If it wasn't every day, it was at least 3 out of 5 days. And that he does not get anymore. And so when we talk about those compromises, I think part of it has to do with the fact that he's a little bit older and he's kind of mellow in
Yeah.
general. So I know my husband's personality. But also, there are days when he says, I'd like to have my wife today. And on those days, he gets his wife. So there is no Town of Cheverly. I make sure he gets his wife, and whatever that means. If it means that he just wants to sit and spend time and talk, or sit in silence, whatever that means, um, then I make sure he does that. So the really important thing is having the communication clear, so that
Mhm.
when that happens, you know to stop and do that. The best thing, the ideal thing would be that he doesn't have to say that to me at all. That I know, okay, now's the time I need to take a little moment to spend time with my family. And I'm working on that. I'm a work in progress too. So that being said, not every day is he supportive. There are some days when he's just like, I don't want to hear the word Cheverly. But I'm going to tell you something. I have his last name, and I told him, I said, I'm putting some respect on your last name too. So he likes that. When I was running for reelection and I was uncontested, he's hemming and hawing how many meetings you going to. The minute somebody ran against me, he says,
Oh.
you got to beat her.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a little competitive spirit in there too. And that let me know that he also believes in the work that I do, because there was never a question to him whether or not I would win. And so in many ways, it's knowing your husband. In other ways, it's going to be the real compromise of what days do I do certain things. There's a lot of times I don't do things for me, because the time that I would have for me, I've spent them on my child, my husband, or my town, or my other professions. And work is not time for yourself, ladies. That's not self-care time. If you're working, that doesn't count. So sometimes I do without. I do have a why, and I share that why with him, and that helps us get to where we need to be. My most important why for why I do this work is I have that 3-year-old little boy who's 3.5 feet tall. So he's going to be a really big black man one day. And I need for everybody in town to know who he is and not bother him because he's walking down the street, just because he is a big black man. So for every 6-hour meeting that I go to, for every meeting that I go to Monday through Friday, I know that my why is not just for my son, but for everybody else's son in town who may have experienced, over policing or anything else that they just don't need to go through.
And I like that you say that, because me, being, I would call myself African or African American, and I have a son who's American. And just having that conversation about you being a black person and what you should expect and how you should hold your head up and do certain things. I remember my son asking this question. He's like, with the whole George Floyd thing that was going on, he's like, Daddy, why is this happening? And I just basically told him, I said, because there are some people who don't like you because of the color of your skin. But you need to let these people understand that you are just as 100% certain with everything you're doing, just like them. There is no difference between you, and there is no difference between them. But it's hard that we have to educate them. It's hard that we have to stand up in 2021, but this is what we have to do. And it's funny because he's in a school where they're multiracial, and he's like, but daddy, my friends treat me okay. My teacher is white, she's fine. I said, yes. I said, there are people who have come to terms with that. I said, but there's some people who just won't like you because you're black. And are you going to be afraid of that? No. You're still going to stand up for your rights, and you're still going to be who you are as a black man living in America. And I say that to say, I felt today that, I think that up to today and up to at this moment that we speak, we still have to educate people. And for me, as someone who's, from a developing country, I don't understand that. I'm like, why do I have to educate you? Like, where's Google? Like, you don't know how to Google stuff. Like, can you do this? And so I just want to move into this segment with you where, last year at the General Assembly, the 75th General Assembly of the United Nations, I, of course, my nerdiness, I watched it and I go through all the little things and I pay for some of it to watch it. And there was a photograph that caught my attention. It was a photograph of all the head of states that was at the General Assembly, and I only saw 2 women. And I immediately had a reaction. And when I tell you I had a whole moment to myself, I had a whole moment. I'm like, this is 2020. Are you kidding me? There are only 2 women heads of state. What is going on? Like, I'm like texting my friends. I'm like, did you see that picture? And everybody looking at me like, calm down. It's not that. So I pose that to you as a woman in politics. Like, for me, I feel like, so where are we going? If at the United Nations, heads of states, there are only 2 women. What's your take on that? Like, how do you feel if why I'm saying this to you? And I wish I had the picture to show it.
Well, there's no surprise there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The unfortunate thing is that no matter how much we harp on, if you're Christian, no matter how much we harp on the fact that Jesus is the great equalizer, we as human beings find ways to make sure someone is not equal to us. And the way that we do that is by figuring out what's their differences and how do I use those differences to separate us and be on top. And quite frankly, men have done a great job of that. Men have been able to keep women out of leadership positions for thousands of years. And it is unfortunate, but it is not surprising. I mean, people will say that Hillary was probably the worst candidate to run for the elections in whatever year that was it 20. It's so hard to remember because those last 4 years
Yeah,
we
don't count, so I can do that. I can do that right
2016
now.
elections.
Yeah, I can.
But the truth is, if we looked at who was better qualified to do the job, if we didn't look at gender at all, but we just looked at the 2 resumes, one resume clearly outweighed the other. Don't look at pros and cons, don't look at personalities, just look at resumes. And so often we see that people who are not competent, people who do not have the same skill set, will be promoted in places where there's likeness, and that likeness is always going to be whites and males. And so it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate on a global scale because women have proven that they can be good leaders. I mean, Liberia has been a perfect example of that. I think if people compare, don't throw stones at me, but I think if people compared the previous president to the current president,
Oh, gee, we haven't thrown no stones at you.
don't throw stones at me.
Oh, we
But
agree with you on this platform.
I think that most people would say that the previous president did a better job of managing the resources for Liberia. Not saying that there was not any inappropriateness, not saying that she didn't hire her sons to do work, not saying there wasn't nepotism or cronyism, just saying she did a better job of managing the resources. And so it's not that women can't do these jobs. It's not that women can't lead. We do that every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about having opportunity and being treated equal. And unfortunately, we still aren't today.
So I have some extra questions, but since we went into this, I'm just going to give you these extra questions. We'll look at the real question. But why do you think it's harder for female candidates to be likable compared to men?
Oh, there's so many reasons. First and foremost, the people that are worse to women are women.
I heard that's what the lady said last week.
Yeah. First let me start on black women, because if you're a black woman and you're outspoken, then you're an angry black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And you're fitting a stereotype where you can't be trusted with your temperament. So then you'll hear words like, does this person have the personality to do the job? Personalities don't do jobs. Personalities manage people, so you have to have a personality to be able to be a good leader of other people. But you don't have to have a good personality to do a good job. That's what you need to focus on. And we don't ask those same questions of men. So I've had an interviewer ask me, or even the questions today, and I'm not offended by them, but they may ask, what does your husband think
Mm-hmm.
of you doing this? You don't ever see anybody asking a man, what does your wife think of you doing this? Another factor is numbers, right? And just the makeup of women. So it takes asking a woman to run for office at least 7 times before she will even consider running for office. Do you know how many times it takes asking a man to run for office?
One.
Zero. You never have to ask a man to run for office. A man will sit down and decide, I can do that better, and decide to run for office. So if we are spending 7 times asking women, just in the sheer number alone, would be why you don't see a lot of women in politics. Now you see more and more, and they're coming based on some value issues, like was somebody's son killed? You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, we see Corey Bush. We see new leaders and movers and shakers that are taking place because of an issue. But
Yeah.
if it wasn't for that issue, they more than likely would not have run for office. And what I think you're going to see is that that's going to change. I think more and more women, AOC,
Mm-hmm.
more and more women are saying, you know what, I can do that. And forget anybody else who says I can't.
And so let's talk about, a woman's role in politics. Why do you think that the role of a young woman is so important in politics?
Um,
And I'm not going to do the age when I say young. I just mean young woman.
I'm like, am I young still?
You're young. You're young, girl. You got a 3-year-old. You're young.
I think they just said millennials are geriatric
Yeah,
somethings or
yeah. I
other.
heard someone actually tagged me into that.
Um, well, I mean, first and foremost, I will remind everyone that Nancy Pelosi is 80 years old. Fantastic job,
And vibrant.
but and very vibrant, but
Yeah.
she's 80 years old.
Mhm.
And we were promised 120, max. So even if she has 40 years left in her terms, someone needs to come behind. There needs to be some secession here. And we also need a different train of thought. Like diversity is not just about race. Diversity is also about difference in generations so that we have the diversity of thought as well. What a development looks like because there are people who are 70 years old working with the developer will be very different than what a developer decides to put in if somebody is 29 years old. So that's
Mhm.
the difference between a Wise grocery store and a Mom's Organic grocery store. That's the difference between deciding whether or not you have food to table restaurants or you have a Shoney's or something else. And that's not to associate any one of those preferences with a different age
Yeah.
group, but you want to make sure you have a diversity of thought. And you want people who have the energy to protest and are able to do that. That's not to say that, people who are older can't, but you also want people who have learned some different things culturally. So I'm accused a lot of being outspoken. There are some generations where women were taught you are to be seen and not heard. And I went to an all women's school where I was allowed to speak up and say what I wanted to say. I was surrounded by women. There was no intimidation. So I am not intimidated in the presence of men. I don't feel like I need to just be seen. You're going to hear me too.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with probably my age range.
So, in politics right now, some people might say, you've made it, you've gone, you've made it, in the city of Cheverly. But even though there is such gender gap in this political arena, how did you overcome that?
So, one, I have not made it. You never arrive. I definitely don't think I've made it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you something. I don't think anyone will make it. I don't think anybody has made it. We have 4 women on council.
Okay.
So we have probably more women than any other time in history, if I recall correctly. So it's our most diverse, it's the most women. And we still have some people who talk to us like with absolute disrespect, like some garbage. And that is because what I tell people, I want people like, what do you want? You seem so angry. I want you to talk to me just like you would a white man. I want you to treat me like how you would a white man. And so, in terms of overcoming that, I would probably tell you I haven't done a very good job of it because I don't tolerate nonsense. I force you to respect me as the vessel that I am, and I just happen to be housed in the body of a black woman. That's just who I happen to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I'm gonna ask you another question. Why do you think that some voters think that men are more qualified over women?
Well, I would say men in general have had the experience to be leaders because they essentially kept that power with men for the longest time. I
Yeah.
mean, women couldn't even vote, much less run for office. And even after black people could vote, black people, only black men could vote. So the suffragist movement took forever before we even had a voice with our vote. And even then, most women were voting along with and parroting their husbands. Um, I think it's really unfortunate that women's voices have not ever been truly heard to the degree that they should. But I do see that tide changing. And I hope that we'll see more and more women in office soon.
Yeah. And so, can you describe a powerful woman political leader, woman politician leadership moment you have experienced?
A powerful leadership moment I have experienced
Yes, as a female politician.
in town, when George Floyd was killed.
Mm-hmm.
I had an expectation of um, the mayor, the ultimate leader of the town. And the truest way to disappointment is to have expectations in the first place. So my expectations weren't met. And that is the day that I realized something. If somebody's doing something and it's not to your liking, or you feel like, man, you need to do something, and you say that, then you need to actually stand in the mirror and say, if you're telling somebody else, man, you need to do something, you need to do something. And so I said, I don't have to sit here and wait for somebody to issue a statement to my community. I have a voice. I will use my voice. And I used that voice to ultimately draft what is called the In Defense of Black Lives resolution in our town. That resolution highlighted the historical racism that was in our town, the systemic racism in our town. It created a police complaints board. It established the Mount Hope Commission, which addresses equity in our town. And I single handedly wrote that by myself. I got edits from other people that I sent it to, but I decided that I have a voice, I am empowered, and I can use my platform to benefit the people in my town. And that was actually voted on and voted unanimously. So I think that was a fantastic moment in my career.
And that is amazing. Are there issues around women in politics that are there issues around women in politics that concerns you?
Well, yeah, again, I don't think we talk to women the same way we talk to men.
Okay.
There's, my first time, I know that Frank is not watching this. My first time in realizing there was a difference in me versus my colleague was when I was a manager. I was made a manager at 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And my assistant manager to me was 37 years old. So 20-year difference. And he made the comment, can't wait for payday. That's, $2,000 in the bank, something like that. And I was like, Frank, how much money are you making? Now, Frank had had a number of illnesses. He did not have an extensive education. Essentially, we were on level playing fields, despite the fact that I was 17. I went to college when I was 15. So I'd worked the entire time that I could. So I had work experience, I had the education, and Frank had a little bit of education, not a whole lot of work experience. But when you compare the two, these are equal people, despite the 20-year age gap. And I learned that Frank was making more money than me. And I went straight to my regional director and asked, why is Frank making more money than me? And he said, Frank has a family to take care of. It was the first time that I realized I was like literally being discriminated against because I was a woman who didn't have a family. And I was like, oh my gosh, they really do that. Like the Lilly Ledbetter Act is there for a reason. And so, yes, there are plenty of areas where women still need to push the envelope and try to become involved in politics. something as simple as the pink tax, where if I buy a pink women's razor that has two blades just like your black men's razor, it's $1 extra. Why? Because females are your highest, women are your highest consumers, and they're going to pay the $1 extra. Well, that's foolishness. Like stuff like that. And I would call those microaggressions against women, right? We could get to the macroaggressions about violence against women. And violence can be both political power and physical violence against women. Policies, like I know you have very religious people watching your show, but the policies that they just passed, like in Texas, whether or not you have autonomy over your body. I tell people all the time, I had a certain status in life, if you will, before I got married. So I'm one of the few people I feel like that should be able to discuss whether or not you can get an abortion. And, things like birth control, those types of policies that seem like they're forgotten. Did you know that insurance pays for you to have the little blue pill, but won't pay for my birth control?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Questions about your body and your autonomy over your body. Like if you want to get your tubes tied, you still have to get your husband's permission if you're married. In 2021, you still have to do that. So there's a lot of reasons why women should still consider getting involved in politics. Not just because of women's issues, but because we are uniquely suited to see things differently.
And I think you saying that, I was going to do you think that when it comes to women in politics, when it comes to leadership, there is some sort of, I was having a conversation with somebody that said, there's a thing about women in leadership. It's like there's a different style of leading. And so is there something like a mother instinct that lead women into a different way when it comes that, get women in leadership that lead differently than men?
I will tell you that a lot of women don't do a good job of it. And I'll tell you why they don't do a good job of it. Because they're trying to be men in the positions.
Okay.
The more women that are in leadership positions, that are in politics, that lead authentically as themselves, the better off it will be. Now, that's a divide, and that's a behavior that's created by men. There's almost sort of this gatekeeper concept. If we can only have 2 women at the UN, what might those 2 women do to any other woman trying to get in and sit at the table? And that's where we have to really change our thinking. There's a way for us to all get a slice of the pie, and we don't have to take your slice. We just make the pie bigger. That's all. So unfortunately, there's a scarcity of positions for women. So women are often awful to each other. They're awful, and they're cutthroat, and they act like, some of the male characteristics because they think they need to do that in order to excel. And I disagree with that notion. I think you can authentically be who you are as a woman and bring the values and the skill sets that you have and succeed just fine.
And I totally agree with you. But then it's also, I wanted to ask you a question. Why is it that women with children always have to reassure voters that they can do their job? It's like this thing I'm constantly saying, like, oh yeah, I have kids, but I'm like, the man got kids too. He's on the platform with you. Why can't he assure? So why do you think women always have to defend their reproductive system or defend themselves as wives? Like why is there always some sort of defense?
Unfortunately, the way that we legislate women's bodies and their motherhood is something that we think is carte blanche belonging to a man. As I stated to you, there was a young lady that was running for mayor 2 terms ago, and she had someone come to the door and tell her, you need to be taking care of your babies. Now, they didn't know if she had the means to have a nanny. They didn't know what the dad did. They didn't know it. They just felt like women take care of babies. And I'll tell you something. We actually do it all. I take very good care of my son. But half of the day, he's with his dad because he has a daddy. And that's perfectly suitable. There's nothing wrong with that. And that doesn't make me a bad mother. And it won't make me a bad council member or vice mayor either. So it's really just about, truthfully speaking, minding your business. If the person is coming to the table, they're getting work done, why do you care who they have at home? That's none of your business.
I agree. And I think the hypocrisy, I would just use the word, I think the hypocrisy when it comes to women in politics is extremely different compared to men and women. I think women are more. I think it's like the lady I had last week where she really talked about her experience, and I wanted to talk to you about it too because I noticed something when I pulled when we did the promotion of the show and we put your picture up and we put all your stuff on it, and somebody commented and said she is so beautiful, and for me I was like, you mean after everything we said, the only thing
Absolutely.
you notice
Thank you. Don't worry about it. Thank
is
you.
yeah, I know. I'm like, okay, yeah, she's beautiful. And what's next? But I say this because I want to ask you that question. As a woman, do you think that most often in the room around the table, that's the first thing people will, comment on? Oh, she's so beautiful. After you don't make a whole statement, express yourself, and they'll be like, oh, she's so cute.
Sometimes, yes. So you have to keep in mind, my master's degree is in leadership. So I've studied all the reasons why people are willing to follow and all the reasons why people are made to lead. One of the number one reasons why folks are follow people is attractiveness. It's truly attractiveness. I don't think I'm all that great, so thank you. I really appreciate that. But um, sometimes that's more, particularly a male audience, is more distracted, if you will, by outer appearance versus actually paying attention to the content of what you're saying. And that's unfortunate. The worst part of that is we write that off as just male behavior, like boys will be boys,
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying let's train our children as male children to be productive citizens that can pay attention to someone no matter what they look like. So yeah, I definitely appreciate the compliment, but also I hope you're also saying, gosh, she really works her behind off, because that's what I'm most proud of. I didn't have anything to do with what I look like. That's just my mom and dad.
And
And yeah, I didn't have any influence in that whatsoever. Um, but the other thing to keep in mind is, in this election, I had people come up to me saying, someone just asked me not to vote for you. And they said, you can trust me. And that's what I would say to people who are voting. Have an educated vote. Educate yourself on what the issues are, particularly in local politics, because those are the ones that will impact you the most. Whether or not you have a pothole, or people are speeding through your neighborhood, hitting your kids with their cars, or you're going to the right schools, those are the things that really make a difference in your life. Pay attention to what's going on with those people and make sure that you make a decision based off of education and not what other people tell you, because we can listen to all kinds of things. I really couldn't believe that some of the behavior that I saw, because it wasn't adult behavior. That's what fifth graders do. Well, I said not to like her, so you shouldn't like her. And I just realized, a lot of adults are really just tall children.
mm-hmm.
So aside from the fact that, there are plenty of people that looked at Barack Obama and was like, man, he's attractive too. But that wasn't the linchpin to his entire administration, 2 terms. What he did, what we are not still talking about Barack Obama and how handsome he was. We do on occasion still talk about his tan Easter suit,
Mm-hmm.
but we look at his policies and what his administration was able to accomplish, and we don't do that for women.
And that's what I say that because now we're going to the question, you as a woman in politics and you hearing that Joe Biden won and we have the first female vice president. Tell me about your reaction. You can give us a
Ah,
whole smile just now.
I mean, I am a registered Democrat. I'm not ashamed to say that. So
Mhm.
I was happy. I was happy that she is a black woman, and is able to show other minority women that it's possible. Now, I say that it is also Asian, Pacific Islander Awareness and History Month as well. She is an Asian Pacific Islander, and so I cannot take that from who she is.
Mhm.
I think that that rhetoric in the news was intended to demean and diminish Black women, because there was a lot of conversation around, why does she have to be Asian now,
Yeah.
when we finally have a Black woman in office. And I think that the media did and continues to play that game against minorities, where they bait each other against each other. The truth is, there are more minorities in the world than there are white people. And the minute that everybody who's brown realizes that, there will be no, I won't say that because that'll probably scare folks, but there would be a real difference in the quality of life for everybody. So I was happy to see it. I was happy to see that our president is a president that stutters, who has a son who had substance abuse. And I was happy to see that because those are real life issues that can make anybody feel like I can't do anything or I can't be anything. And every last one of those problems, they said these will not be barriers to me being successful. And so I feel like we have a cabinet. I feel like we have leadership that we can look up to. And if you ever think, man, and I hate to say that I love, Hunter's story so much, but there's somebody somewhere right now that's getting high off crack,
Mm-hmm.
and they think that they're the worst thing in the world, and they can look up and say, you know something, he has it, not just because of his resources or just because he had a great dad. This same man lost all of his siblings. He lost his sister, he lost his mom, and they have managed to survive that and now lead our country through a pandemic, through a possible recession, and do a great job so far doing it. And that means that if they can do it, you can do it. And I think that that's all about the American story.
Yeah.
If they can do it, you can do it.
And you say that that's important because I too stutter, and unfortunately, I would say, can I say unfortunately, Matthias stutters. And so there are certain words that we can say. And I remember, I have a friend is a speech pathologist. And so she was going to work with him. And I just had a conversation with him because we always talking. I was like, well, and he's like, Daddy, no, I'm fine. He said, did you see someone to help you? I said, no, I just learned there are certain words that I can say. So I learned how to say it slower. And I learned how to calm down when I'm talking. And then I was learning how to count my words so that I can actually get my words out. And he said, well, I can do the same. If you can do it, I can do it. And so, it was funny because just the other day we were talking again. And he's like, Daddy, how's the show going? And I was like, it's fine. He's like, so you see, you on the show and you talking, and I don't think you started on the show. So why do you want me? And I was like, wow. For my son, to catch those little things about me and put himself in my shoe and say, you know what, if you can do it, I can do it. And so I just look at it in the light where I like the fact that you said that, because I think for me, Joe Biden is very relatable. I think, he was a man that I can say, oh, okay, he had a son who had this. He lost family members, but he was still able to, come back and be who he is. And so I think for us, it's just confused. I think for me, it's just like, wow, this is the American dream. This is what they say, we should come up, where anybody can do whatever they want to. Anybody can be who they want to be. And so, just going back to you, is there, you did give us that information. So as a female politician, what is your hope or assumption for women in politics?
I think women are going to take over.
Oh,
I don't see why. I don't see why we can't. Anytime someone tells me, if we had over the holidays, there was an all black production, and I was so proud of this artist because he went to Morgan State, and is from the area, and I think his name is David Talbert, and he did this Jingle Jangle production that's on Netflix.
mm-hmm.
And the question was, well, is it okay to have an all black production on television? And I'm like, you've had all white productions. What's wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
So if there's ever a table, I don't know if anybody remembers the image from when the Bush years were in place and they were actually having even harsher penalties about abortions and things like that. And there was just a panel of 9 white men making those decisions. And they took a picture of that, and that was on the front of the New York Post. And I was like, these are the people that get to decide what I do with my body.
Yes.
And they don't know anything about
About
me or what it's like to be a woman. So what I thought to myself was, I'm okay if one day that panel is all brown. I'm okay if one day that panel is all women, because it's been all men all before. So, and I don't think we have to take over entirely, but I'm not afraid to say that more and more women are going to get involved in politics. They will learn that there's a science to it. You have to have walk sheets. You
Mm-hmm.
do have to knock on doors, and there's a certain percentage of numbers that you have to have in order to know if you can win. You have to have the faith to do it. You have to have the chutzpah to do it, because it's hard. People don't call their local politician to say, hey, great job. They call you because something is wrong. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to withstand constant criticism and constant problems. But I think more and more women will find that they are suited for the job, and they will get those jobs done. We've let folks try it before. Y'all tried it. And maybe you were successful, maybe you weren't, but it's time to move on. Yeah.
And you say that, and I tell people, I think the whole world knows that I am an extreme feminist. I love the work that women do. I think Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, I will say this publicly, is a true example of what women can do. She took Liberia from where it was to where it is now. God forbid what's happening now, but we'll leave that story alone. But for the last, I will tell you this, for the last season, this season, I've gotten a lot of DMs and messages. Why do you want to have women on your show? Why do you have men on your show? Blah, 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 blah. And I just openly said, my platform is to have a conversation. And I feel that the conversation around women aren't being talked about. I think everything that we do is all about men doing this and a guy doing this and a guy. I'm like, where are my sisters? Especially my sisters. They need to be heard too. And I said this in the last show. It's like, we go into this space where we are approaching a certain age and our parents are approaching a certain age. And so me and my siblings, we were having conversation about, taking care of one of my parents. And we're 3 boys and I only have 1 sister. And I could tell during the conversation that there was some sort of suppression with her. She wasn't talking a lot. I could tell from her voice. So I got at the corner and I called her. I'm like, what's going on? I said, maybe you don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. Did you feel that because you are a woman and you have 3 brothers that you can't say what you want to say? I said, you need to be honest with me. And she said, yes. She said, I feel that because I'm a girl, you guys can say whatever you want to say and whatever you guys say goes because you guys. And I said, oh, excuse my language. I said, oh, hell to the no. I said, I don't want you to ever in your life feel that because you're a woman that your voice cannot be heard. I said, I want you to you're going to hold me accountable. If we're ever in a meeting or we're ever meeting and you say something and you don't feel that you were heard because you're a woman, you need to call me out so I can address that.
Do you realize how often that happens though? There's a whole term for it. The
I couldn't believe that my sister, I love her to death. And I'm like, this girl feels this way. And I know this probably not the first time, but this was the first time because I have come to be in tune with these situations. I could understand that there is something off with my sister. And so I just feel it's just like, this is 2021. Like, I don't think no woman should not be heard because she's a female. She's the other gender. Like, that make no sense to me.
It is so ingrained in our culture that a woman can be in a corporate boardroom, make a comment, have an observation, and not be heard.
Oh.
And a man can say the exact same thing she just said and be heard. It is just part of what we have said is the culture of our country. And it would be great if that could change because what women have to add is valuable. And honestly, the only way that it does change is people like you. Thank you for this platform that give women a voice. There's so much stuff that we don't even know about in terms of women being in office because we just haven't had the opportunity to see it. We have no idea how women would lead, right? Because there's so many places where women are still becoming the first this and the first that. So I would encourage everybody to say, just give people a chance. The same brain that God made for the male mind, it's the same material.
Mm-hmm.
It may work differently, but it's the same stuff. And so neither one is inferior to the other.
And someone just put a comment and say, it also depends on personality. I can talk over my brothers and some. And I'm like, you can talk over them, but are they taking in what you're saying? Because there are 2 different things. You can talk over them, you can be the loudest in the room, but are they really accepting what you're saying and are they comprehending what you're saying?
Let me tell you why that statement is so important. That statement is so important because it is the absolute definition of inclusion. We can have diversity all day long. That's having 3 women at the table, 3 men, everybody being a different race, everyone having different backgrounds. But whose voice is actually heard?
Mm-hmm.
If everybody's voice is not heard, you don't have inclusion at all. You just got your diversity. So yeah, if you can say something and people are actually listening to you, then you've got influence, and that's very rare for a woman, honestly.
Yeah, and I see that, and it's funny because us being in healthcare, it's ridiculous. I will tell you, I don't see no other society like in that industry. Women, that's a whole different podcast. So I'll just leave that alone. But as we wrap it up now, as we close, You said it earlier. You being married to someone who's originally from Africa. Um, what do you see when it comes to women in politics in Africa? What do you see? And I know you'll be studying that stuff, so I know you got you know already.
Uh, well, I don't want to alarm anybody, but I was like,
You're not gonna remember.
I'm like, I'm moving to Liberia and I'm running for office, right?
Yes,
I get so frustrated. I'm so frustrated.
yes, we're doing this. I told the other girl on the show 2 shows ago. One of somebody I just met, virtually her name is Sivette, and she ran for representative, but she didn't go through. And I was like, girl, what is it that you need me to do to help you so that you can do what you need to do? Because
That
I
question.
feel this is the time for men, especially young guys like us, to rally behind these strong and powerful women to make a change in politics. Because we just thought of our fathers. I'm just going to say this because they ain't our brothers. There's our fathers telling us what to do and not including us in these conversations. So why not get our sisters and our mothers to deal with this conversation like you actually do at home?
So if you want to see that change, what you're talking about is what's necessary. There has to be support. And I have to say, like, for running for office, because of how the community rallied around me, because of how people felt like I was being done dirty, I had people knocking on doors. I don't even know what their names are. I had, and these were men. I
Mhm.
had folks from the county Democrats group was knocking on doors. Julian Ivy, our delegate, knocked on doors. County Councilwoman Julian Ivy did. People like who you would call celebrity politicians.
Mhm.
Really was like, y'all trying to do this girl wrong. And what I would encourage every man to do, and that's hard to do when we're talking about the continent of Africa, but especially like the West African continent, where there are still views about what women should do and what men shouldn't do, is that this is no longer a supposition. We have facts and science and proof that shows that when you invest in women, you improve your entire community. When you
Yes.
invest in men, only 2 to 3 people benefit. So that's I mean seriously, we've
It's
learned that
proven.
through
No, it's
we've learned that through microloans, we've learned
Yeah.
that through education. We have learned that investing in women think on a more global scale. They think outside of themselves. They think of at least their children and offspring of other people. And the your dollar goes further for you if you invest in a woman. So do that.
And I would say this. I know it started something in Liberia. It's called, I think it's a LAPA, whatever it is, but I will get that information to you. This is political women in Liberia who are trying to educate women in Liberia what politics is all about. You talk about the numbers, who you're supposed to vote for, when you're voting, why you should vote for this person. They're trying to do all that stuff, and then they're also trying to rally with women because I will tell you, there was a woman that literally was raped. She was gang raped because she was running for, I think, senator or representative. I can't remember. She was gang raped to stop from running. But at the end of the day, she won. And those women rally around her to make her to get her seat. And so now she's in the office. She's in she's in parliament, in Congress, whatever they call it in Nigeria. But she made it there because those women rally around her. And my thing was like, imagine if those women did it. Imagine if other men could join those women to make sure that, hey, if we know that there are certain women going into certain parts of the country where we know that, there are criminals and they're going to attack this woman, guys, we need to handle her and help her out so she can make what she's supposed to do. So,
So I would also say to that though, don't just assume that women are feeble creatures and we're victims all the time.
oh, no.
But we definitely want that support. But aside from that, as you're doing that while the person's running for office, rally for them after they're in office too. Because for that young lady, that's a traumatic event.
Yeah.
And we're just expecting her to show up to work every day and still perform. And trust me, that has a psychological impact on her. Just running for the elections in town and seeing some of the responses that I saw on social media about me, there were 4 different mayors who wrote letters about me that were complete negative statements. And that's new to me. I'm a people pleaser. I'm used to people saying positive things about me. But what that taught me was, and I'm so glad that young lady pressed forward, was they wouldn't be doing that if I wasn't a real threat.
Mm-hmm.
So that must mean I'm bringing something to this table that they're concerned about. And if they're concerned about that, I'm going to push forward because I see a benefit in that. But as I do that, it's great to get some encouragement later on. So just remember, as you rally for somebody during the process, rally for them afterwards too.
Well, I tell you, like you said, you are planning to do this. I'm gonna be here for you. I'm so mad that I don't live in Cheverly because I was gonna be crazy. But anyway, as we close, what valuable moments as a woman did you experience during your campaign leading to the election?
Like Mr. Tucker was the president of the Fourth Ward Civics Association for 33 years, and he had some significant health problems. To see him get out of his bed and come vote for me meant the world. And I understood that he understood that I knew what my role was, and that included bringing the history of my community with me. Don't just run for office because it's something to put on your resume. In order for you to do a good job of being a public official, you have to care about people.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that I cared about the people in the community. Some of the best moments had nothing to do with running for office. There were some of my neighbors that just needed help getting up out of their bed because they're disabled. And knowing that they trusted me enough to share that information with me, and knowing that I wouldn't go tell the whole town who it was and why, um, made me feel like I'd done a good job. Being able to get the policies passed unanimously, that was huge, you know, and recognizing that I still have more work to do, and knowing that the work that I'm doing is valuable. You can pass a lot of resolutions, you can pass a lot of laws, but being able to say and using those hookups, 2 weeks from now, I have somebody coming from the Department of Environmental Services because I need you to look at pipes in my town. That's not exciting work, but I don't want anybody to ever tell me that their basement has flooded because the town didn't do their job.
Mm.
And so, as small and menial as those tasks may seem, each one of them is fulfilling to me.
Well, as we're at closing, is there anything you would like to say to all the young women who might be watching, who will watch this show?
Yeah, run. And I'm gonna tell you what, when I was asked to run, I said no those 7 times. Run. I printed up a little card and I started knocking on doors. And that is the way you win elections. You don't win elections through endorsements. You don't win elections from people putting your sign in their yard. You win elections by going door to door and telling people why you want to do this. Make sure you have a good why and make sure they know you care, and you'll win.
Well, guys, this was Kayce Munyeneh, Vice Mayor and Council Member for Ward 4, Cheverly, Maryland. This was an amazing conversation. I appreciate you. I say thank you for coming back. And this is just awesome. I can't wait to, when we're on the plane heading to Liberia, to do this. I am really ready for this. So those who are watching, the conversation is going on the road actually in December. We'll be in December in Liberia between December 12th and December 26th, and they're going to be shows all over Liberia. So guys, get ready. It's going to be serious. So Kayce, we say thank you for being here with us, and we appreciate you. And I'm going to say, have a good day. Bye, guys.